What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Making Room podcast, where we clear out the clutter and make more room for God to move in our lives. I'm your host, Paul Radke, and I've got a bit of a confession to make to you today. I am extremely stress avoidant. If there's potential for a situation to cause stress in my personal life, then my gut instinct, my normal reaction, is to avoid that topic at all costs. Doesn't matter if it's physical, financial, relational, emotional, that doesn't matter what aspect of life it's dealing with. If I think or perceive it's going to cause stress for me, then I want to have nothing to do with it. Funny thing about that is that there's no avoiding stress in life. As much as we'd like a stress-free life, it's just not a thing that exists in real life. If you've got a real life, then you've got real situations, and real situations often cause stress. So in this episode, I thought I would give you some vital tools that have helped me to overcome stress and deal with it more appropriately. So don't go anywhere, because that's what's coming up on Making Room. Something this year has been really effective at teaching me is that stress is unavoidable. As much as I would like to live a stress-free life, as much as I want stress to go away, stress continues to exist. It continues to pursue me. Doesn't matter what I get rid of, what I push away, what I try to avoid, stress finds a way to find me. I think pretty much all of us can relate to that on some level. All of us have stress, whether it's family stress, business stress, something's going on in your life that is causing you stress that you wish would be resolved or would go away and you wouldn't have to deal with it any longer. That's pretty much been how I've lived my life. And even this year, it's how I lived my life. I try to get around having to deal with it. I am really good at taking situations and making them work to my favor. That's not always a good thing. It sounds like, oh, well, you learned how to work a situation out so that it works for you. Yes, but there comes a point, and this year has been that point, where there's nothing else to work out. There's no more games to play. There's nothing else to manipulate and get to work in my favor. God has put me in a place where I either deal with the issues that I'm trying to avoid, or I continue to suffer under the weight that's crushing me. I heard somebody preach few years back, and it really got to me. He said, if you're experiencing stress, it's because you need more structure. Now, he was talking about it in a business sense, but it's true of almost every area of life. If I'm dealing with stress at any area of life, chances are that I don't have enough structure in that area of life to support the weight that it's trying to carry. So if I've got relationship stress, chances are that there's something going on in the relationship that the structure has been compromised. Maybe we're both just trying to get our own way. Maybe we're not having enough compassion or empathy. Maybe our communication skills are terrible. There's some structural problem in the relationship that is causing stress. If it's got to do with business, maybe it's my employees are poorly trained, or I haven't learned how to budget and manage my finances. And so I'm constantly stressed out about, will I have enough money to pay the bills, to pay payroll, to continue to manufacture whatever it is I produce. This can be applied to almost anything. Just think about what you're dealing with as far as stress is concerned. Is it a family problem, a relationship problem? Is it a business problem? Is it a financial problem? And then think about the internal structures of whatever is causing you stress. And chances are something's amiss. Something's not right. If I'm going through financial stress, it's probably because I'm not budgeting appropriately. I'm not handling my finances in a way that allows me to live life without having to worry about finances. If you think about a physical structure, like a house or a 10-story building, something that has to be built, you want a building of strong integrity that when you go to put things in that building, it can handle the weight of whatever it is you're trying to build, right? If you're trying to build a house, you want a foundation that's solid, of good integrity. You want walls and studs that are built appropriately so that when you put the sheetrock on them and you put the roof on top and all the things that, well, you should probably put the roof on top first. But once you put the roof on top and you put the sheetrock up, you want it to be able to handle the stress of whatever it is you're trying to build inside of that home. And if you've built a poor foundation of low integrity, then once you start to put weight on that foundation, it's going to crumble. And pretty soon the whole structure is going to fall. If you have a good foundation, but your walls aren't built appropriately, then they're not going to be able to hold the weight of what you're trying to build. And I think that's a good analogy for life in many ways, is that we are so focused on avoiding stress or living a stress-free life. But if we would start to focus on the integrity of the life that we're constructing, I think that we'd find ourselves in a much better place of not having to avoid stress, but being able to carry the weight of that stress. As I said, stress is unavoidable. So, as much as you want to get rid of it, it's always going to find you some way. If you get rid of it in one aspect of life, it'll show up in another aspect of life. And so, our goal can't be just to avoid stress. Instead, we've got to learn to build a structure that can support the stress of life. Now, a good foundation for all of us, and if you're listening to this podcast, you know this already, is a strong spiritual foundation that's founded on the teachings of Jesus. If you believe in Jesus, if you believe that his words are truth in life, then there's no better structure to start to build on, no better foundation than the teachings that he's given us. If you want to read more about that, you can find it in Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount. Just that alone teaches us to build on the strong foundation. In fact, Jesus even says at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, he even says, if you build on these teachings, you're building on a solid rock, that when the storms of life come, that you'll remain standing. So he pretty much gives us the keys and the answers that we're looking for right there in that one sermon. But past that, there's other parts of life that have got to be dealt with, that have to be built appropriately if we hope to be able to carry the stress of whatever it may be. If that's a relationship and you're married or you plan to get married, it's wonderful to think that life will always be butterflies and sunshine, but eventually you're going to have stress in your relationship. Whether that's from internal structures that maybe your communication is not good and you're learning to live with somebody else, which is not always easy, or maybe it's from external pressures of maybe your spouse lost their job or you lost your job, and now you're having to learn how to deal with financial pressure as a couple. Either way, you're going to have to build the structure necessary to support the weight of whatever it is that's causing you stress. Now, you can try to avoid it and you can try to put a Band-Aid on it, right? I lost my job. I'm going to find another job that puts the stress on a shelf somewhere that I don't have to deal with it right now. But it's just going to come back up later. That stress, whatever is lacking in the structure of your relationship as it pertains to finances and uncertainty, it's going to come up at some point in life. And if you wait until you are bogged down under the weight of that stress, you're going to have a lot harder time building the structure. It's a lot harder to build when you've got weight that's too heavy for you to carry. It's best to start building before it's carrying weight. And just like it would be for a building, it's the same of your life. It's best for me to start building a structure that can handle heavy things before heavy things come my way. Jesus even taught this. He said, who goes to build anything without first counting the cost to make sure they have enough to complete building it? And when you're thinking about that in terms of your life, and you acknowledge that stress is going to be a part of your life, instead of trying to get rid of stress and just push it out, you learn to build the structure necessary to carry the weight that you have to hold. In my life this year, finances has definitely been one of those areas where I struggle under the weight. I have not built the structures. I'm not a strong budgeter. I have a certain level of lifestyle that I want to maintain no matter what's going on in life, what bills have to be paid. I'm not good at slashing things that are unnecessary because to me, they feel quite necessary, in fact. Right? I like going out to eat a lot. I like going to the movies a good bit. I like doing things that are outside of the house, eating at home and cooking every night. I'm not equipped to deal with that. I grew up going out to eat all the time. We were constantly out of the house. We lived busy lives. So living a life this past year where I'm not really all that busy, I'm home far more than I'd like to be. I am always searching for ways to get out the house. Now, that eventually takes its toll on my finances, and that takes its toll on me in terms of stress. So I've had to learn this year, and I'm still trying to learn this, is to build a stronger structure financially so that when unexpected things come up, I am not crushed under the weight of not having enough finances. If I save more now, then when I need it later, I'm not so stressed out because I don't have it. Another area of life that I've really had to adjust is dealing with the stress of relationships. Before I could distract myself with work, I had a church to run, I had a daycare to oversee, I had people to stay in touch with consistently, and there were always things to distract me and that were quote unquote a higher priority for me at that time, which is just true of where my brain was. That I focused on to avoid any stress there might be in my relationship with Madison or with anybody else in my life. This year, I don't have those things to distract me. And so I've had to focus more on my relationships. I've been put in a position where there's no avoiding it. I've got to learn to build better structures in my marriage and with my friends and with my family. And it's been a very uncomfortable journey, but it's also been a very rewarding journey. My relationship with Madison has gotten a lot stronger over the last year. My perception on life and how I want to live and the things that I want to do and the things that I want to accomplish, my perception has gotten so much better in those areas because I've been forced into a place where I've had to deal with bad perceptions. I've been put in a place where I had to deal with parts of life that I'd been avoiding dealing with. God has really been gracious to help me build better structures internally so that as I build things externally, I can handle the weight of it far better. Now, think about this for your life. If you don't build a life of strong integrity, and I'm not just talking about being honest and ethical and moral, and that those are all good things, and we need those things. They're an important aspect of life, but I mean integrity in the sense that you're able to carry the weight that you're needing to carry, that you're being able to carry the weight of your family, that you're being able to carry the weight of the bills and the financial situation you're in, that you're able to carry the weight of what's going on at your job. Being a person of integrity is far more than just being honest. It's being able to carry the weight of life. I read a book by Henry Cloud. I think it was called Integrity. And he talked about having integrity and being able to carry weight. And he defined character this way. He said, having good character is having the ability to meet the demands of reality. Now, think about this. Man, this has just been cooking my brain since I read that phrase. Is having good character is having the ability to meet the demands of reality. So when I'm faced with a situation that I don't want to deal with, like I said, I'm very avoidant of things that are stressful. But if I want to be a good person of character, if I want to have strong integrity that can handle weight, then I have to be able to meet the demands of the reality I'm facing. Now, in church circles, we use faith sometimes as a method of avoiding things we don't want to deal with, right? My finances are terrible, so I've got faith God's going to fix it, but that's pretty much where it stops. I just believe God's going to just come down and fix my bank account. We come to find out as we live life that that's not necessarily true. God entrusts you to handle your finances appropriately. He doesn't just keep on pouring more money at the problem. He entrusts you to build the internal structures you need to be able to handle what he's entrusted you with. Same thing with your relationships. Same thing with your business or your job. God is entrusting you with those things to be able to manage them and steward them in a way that has strong integrity. God's not looking for you to have faith for him to just fix it whenever a problem shows up. If you've been living your life that way, I've certainly lived my life that way for large periods of time. And you know what? God did not always show up when I wanted him to. He didn't always just poof, fix the problem. Sometimes when I was trying to meet God in faith, he met me in faithfulness. When I was trying my best just to believe that God would fix it, instead of him just coming and pouring more money into my bank account, he met me when I was putting money away to save more. when I was putting money away to pay off my debts quicker, when I was being more responsible and not just wasting what he had entrusted me with, but stewarding it appropriately to achieve the goals that I hope to achieve. I would love for him just to come up and show up and fix my relationship problems every time I had a problem. But instead, he meets me in a place where I am willing to work on that relationship, where I'm willing to sacrifice and pour my heart into it. And that's where God shows up the most for me. I believe that's where he'll show up the most for you, is not when you're just going, I'm believing that he's going to fix it, but when you actually start taking steps to fix it. When instead of just saying God's going to heal my relationship, you start having the difficult conversations necessary for fixing that relationship. When we become people of character that are able to meet the demands of reality, we become people of integrity that are able to carry the weight of what's been entrusted to us. And when we are able to carry the weight, stress is no longer a bad thing. Stress actually becomes something quite beautiful. Once we have a house that is of strong integrity or a building that's of strong integrity, we can decorate it and make it a good place to live, a good place to work. We can give it character, we can give it beauty, we can have all of these things inside of it that are great to look at, that are useful to have around. But until we have a strong building of strong integrity, then we're not able to build those things. When you build a life of integrity that's able to carry the weight that's been entrusted to you, then you're able to put weight on it that's not necessarily bad. It's actually quite beautiful. It's actually quite useful. My home being of good, strong integrity is quite useful to me. That means I can lay my head on the pillow at night and not wonder if the roof is going to cave in. Now, the walls might think that that's stressful, but I think that's quite wonderful. And what's stress to you might be causing shelter for somebody else. What's causing you weight, what's causing things in your life that seem like they're heavy can actually be something beautiful for the people around you. It can be something beautiful for your family when you learn to get your finances in order. It can be something beautiful for your family when you learn that your marriage is something that is of utmost priority that needs to be worked on, that it's not something that's at the bottom of the list once you get around to it, but it's at the top of the list. That after you've said your prayers and you have faith and you read scripture, that you get to work on building strong communication skills, that you get to work on resolving conflicts in your marriage. These are things that are building structures that are capable of carrying more weight. If you, like me, are looking for God to entrust you with even greater things, you want to accomplish something great for Him, you want to accomplish something great for your family, you want to be successful in every aspect of life, physically, financially, relationally, emotionally, then we have got to learn that stress is not always a bad thing. In fact, stress is quite useful if we would learn to put the structures in place that are able to carry it. So as you go through the rest of your year into next year, be thinking about how can you not avoid stress, but instead build the structures necessary to carry the weight you're being asked to carry. It's not always an easy thing. God knows it's not always easy, but it is something beautiful. It is something that is so full of faith to say that, you know what, this is really difficult for me. I've never had to live this way before. I've never had to build this structure before, but I see where I want to go. I see the marriage that I want to have. I see the finances that I want to have. I see the business that I want to own. And the only way that I can get there and trust that it will remain standing once I've built it is to start putting the structures in place that can carry the weight. Quit trying to avoid those difficult conversations with your family. Quit trying to avoid those difficult conversations with your employees or with your employer. Quit trying to avoid stress and instead start to build the structures that are able to carry the weight that needs to be carried. Be somebody of character that can look at the reality of what your life is right now. You might be dealing with a sickness. You might be dealing with poverty. You might be dealing with poor job circumstance. You might be dealing with homelessness. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, there's a path to making that situation better. And believing God and trusting in God is number one on that. And then number two is starting to build the structure so that you can get to where you want to go. Jesus said this. He said, "In this life you will have trouble, but take heart because I have overcome the world." He pretty much made it a guarantee that in life you're going to have stress, but to take heart, you can overcome it. He has already paid the price of eternal salvation. He's already paid the price to give you his spirit. He said, if anybody lacks wisdom, let him ask of God who gives to all men generously. But he also said, let him ask in faith, because the double-minded man must not expect he'll receive anything from God. So let's start to build the structure that's necessary so that as we ask for wisdom, as we ask in faith for God to do something great in our lives, when stress comes up, and it will because it's a part of life, we have built the structure spiritually, relationally, emotionally, communicatively, that we are able to carry the weight of what's been placed on our shoulders. So let's just recap this. Stress is a part of life. It will always be a part of life. If you're dealing with stress that seems unbearable, it's because you don't have enough structure to carry the weight. What you need is to build a life of integrity, because building a life of integrity means that you can handle more and more weight. And to build a life of integrity, we have to be people of character, people that see the reality of what life is and are able to address it face on. Not trying to run away from it, not trying to avoid it, but look at the problem square in the face and deal with it. I promise I've been dealing with it and I can see the difference. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to apply this to my life, but I can already see that it works. When you stop trying to avoid stress and instead meet stress head on, deal with the reality of what you're facing. If it's a financial problem, if it's a relationship problem, whatever it might be, deal with the problem you're facing. Start to build the structure that you need to carry the weight you're meant to carry. With faith in God and trust in his ability to get us where we need to go, I know that we're going to learn to carry this stress more effectively. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you heard something that you found very useful for your life. If you did, do me a favor and share it with a friend or a family member who might need to hear it. It would really help this audience to grow. Also, please hit the like, subscribe, or follow button so that you can continue to get updated as new episodes come out. I appreciate you all so much, and I look forward to being with you again next week as we continue making room.